everybody. How are we all doing? Woo! We are awake. It's all good. Yes, so Matt gave a fantastic introduction. I'm here today to talk about the extra things that we don't tend to think about as being aspects of standing out when we're submitting for jobs, you know, sending out our applications and everything else. And I'm going to actually use my own experience to talk about why these things are actually helpful. So it's not just hints and tips of what to do, it's actually why I'm the living embodiment of why a lot of these things actually matter. So, thankfully, oh, come on, don't freeze on me. There we go. So, already had a fantastic introduction from Matt, so I'm not going to go into this in any more detail. The main thing is I collect social media like Pokemon, so if you want to connect with me after, if you've got follow-up questions, of course I'll be downstairs after at the Meet the Speaker section, but if you think of anything afterwards, just come and speak to me and say hi. I don't bite. You know, this is all about community and connecting and learning from each other, so please do reach out if you've got anything you want to chat about. So, we're all here today because maybe we are, you know, doing a bit of a career shift and change. We're all looking and searching for jobs at the moment. And does this look a bit familiar? We're all feeling a bit stuck and a bit frustrated. I've been here, I've done this, I've got the t-shirt so many times. I have been the person that always assumed that actually just getting my head down and doing a good job meant that, you know, the next opportunities were going to come. And I've been disappointed every single time. It is really hard out there, it's really rough, and I fully get that, and I think it's fab that this event is on today to give help and to give me a platform to come and help you guys as well. One of the things I've always found is your CV at the moment is stuck in the middle of a huge pile. We've literally had, you know, a panel talking about CVs and how to stand out and all these other things. And what I've tended to find is when I was an engineer and now as an advocate, the things that I found I struggled with were things like standing out. Things such as showing what I could do, because a lot of my code working for a large investment bank was proprietary. So whenever interviewers would go, can you tell us about your code? Or can you show us some of your code? I'm like, it's all in a private repository. You guys are not going to see any of this. So it gets really frustrated, and what I'm here to show you is some tips that you can do to actually showcase your work, not just through the list of things in a CV that you've done with regards to a particular role, but community contributions and how actually those stand out and amplify, particularly if, as a hiring manager, of which I am, you can actually see what people are doing and also evaluate things such as their knowledge and these other things that are hidden ahead of coming in for an interview. So in order to do that, we're going to talk about 4 things specifically. So we're going to talk about personal projects. I'm not talking about open source. I'm talking about the ones you work on yourself and why these are actually useful. I'm going to talk about open source contributions and how to get started, and also some of the common pitfalls people fall into. We're going to talk about content, actually, you know, writing things and the various ways you can showcase your knowledge. And we are also going to talk about conference speaking so that you can come and replace me next time and showcase your knowledge then as well and share your amazing story. So if we start with personal projects, one of the things that I said before was the fact that a lot of my code was actually invisible and you couldn't see it. And is that a problem that a lot of people are finding at the moment? Maybe a lot of the work they've done before, it's listed on your CV as an item, but sadly, there's not much else on there. So actually, personal projects are really useful. Now, one of the common pitfalls I see when people start working on personal projects is they start playing technology buzzword bingo and thinking about the types of technologies that are, you know, hip and popular. So everyone starts building, you know, AI agents and things like that. And while that's great if your natural skills are there, you've also got to showcase relevant technologies that was mentioned in the panel before, that you're willing and comfortable to talk about in an interview situation. So when you start thinking about these projects, it can be something as small as starting an advent of code and doing everything in Python, or it can be something bigger that you care about. Pick relevant technologies that you want to showcase, because these are examples that show what you can do. Make sure you adhere to relevant code standards, make sure that you've got adequate testing. The number of repositories I see that have no tests is surprising. I'm guilty of it too, I'll be honest, but we're trying to showcase the good practices that you have, so make sure there's tests there, make sure it's well documented, including things like a README that tells me how to run it. If there's a CI pipeline, great. I can see if the build is passing or failing as an interviewer. And also make sure it's public. See if you've set this GitHub repo to private. No one can see it. So make sure it is public. And then also make sure that you have a good space on GitHub as well. So you can see up there on the left, that's my example of my personal README on GitHub. And this is a special README within GitHub that actually allows you to basically write a bit about yourself. So make sure that's there with relevant things, keep it up to date, similar like a CV and a LinkedIn. And that means when people find you, it's a welcoming space that talks about what you're doing. You can also have your pinned projects up there. And make sure you have the contributions enabled so I can see via this infamous green kind of graph when you're contributing. Because if all of these are really old and ancient, as a hiring manager, I'm going to look at that and go, well, maybe they're not as active as I thought, or maybe they're not doing this stuff anymore. And that's a useful thing to know about as well, if I can see there's relevant, up-to-date things in there. Now, of course, there's open source contribution, and this would be projects that are basically built within the community by a series of maintainers and contributors that are all working together and collaborating on open and free software. It's a fantastic ecosystem to connect with people, to make connections, and indeed for many companies, including Elastic, it can often be a gateway into applying or going for an interview because we can see the good contributors coming out of these common projects. Now, quite often, one of the pitfalls I see is people automatically start searching through the foundations and finding the biggest project out there and say, I'm going to start contributing to this without knowledge of that ecosystem. You are setting yourself up for a huge learning curve. You will struggle to find issues that you can action, and you might end up actually feeling really frustrated in the end. So while the foundations are useful, such as Apache, Cloud Native for the monitoring ecosystem, Linux Foundation for a lot of the big hitter projects, my advice is start with something that you know. Look at the projects you've been using in your personal projects or the ones you used to use in a prior role that you want to try and pick up again, and start from there. Also be aware of the special files. So for those who have not done any open source contributions before, there are some particular documentation that you need to adhere to. So make sure you read the README first. Make sure you check things like the building and contributing files so that you understand what the rules and guidance is and the recommendations of how to contribute to that project. Look at support, check out the license, because the license will impact your changes as well. So obviously if it's a copy and left license, then your changes also have to be open as well. Check out the contributors. Maybe they're people you can ask questions to and get help if you get stuck. Look at the acknowledgements and also look at the changelog. Look at the files to make sure that it's a recent project, that people are working on it, and it's not dormant and dead. The other thing you can look for is a tag known as Good First Issue. Hands up if anyone's heard of Good First Issue. No. So Good First Issue is a specific tag applied to many issues on a GitHub repository for a lot of the big projects. And the indication of this is actually a good issue to try and work on if you are brand new to this particular project. So if you're trying to learn how to get up to speed, these are certainly the ones to look for. And then I also recommend starting small. There is nothing wrong, as I have done, with small changes such as correction to typos in the documentation. That's still a contribution. To be honest, that's where most of my contributions actually are, is correcting documentation. So you start small, just like a kid trying to climb to the top of the climbing frame with these small things, and you work up from there. So maybe it's a minor update to the docs, as I've been doing. Maybe it is Good First Issue. And then from there, you can start building up. Maybe it's an issue you've found or a bug. Maybe it's raising a pull request. And then eventually, perhaps as you become more involved in a particular project, you might even become one of the maintainers or even start getting involved in special interest groups that tend to govern some of the bigger projects. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is writing and content. Now, does anyone share any knowledge on social media? Does anyone share anything on a personal blog or anything like that? One person, maybe two. Cool, well done you guys. It's a big jump, and actually it's how I got started as well. And one of the things I started with was my experience. So I actually started blogging internally when I used to work in the bank and share a lot of knowledge. And then an intern said to me one day, it's a shame this stuff isn't outside because I've learned so much from you and I'd like to keep doing that after I leave and go back to uni. And that was the clincher for me of, oh yeah, my stuff's not visible outside. So start with your experience, start with what you know, and start writing something somewhere. The trick is to post somewhere regularly. It doesn't necessarily matter where, it's somewhere regularly that you are comfortable engaging with. So it could be a blog. If you want to create your own or you want to set up a site, that's fine. But it doesn't have to be to start with. It could be writing and publishing articles on LinkedIn. One of the panelists in the last panel was talking about this idea of following influencers. You could be one of these people that shares your knowledge with people coming up behind you, which is exactly what I've done my whole career. You can publish on LinkedIn, even small threads on Blue Sky or whichever social forum you're comfortable in. These are all valid things and places to share, and it gets your name out there. You can also look at other portals and forums, so dev.to is a common one, particularly in the Python ecosystem. You can use Medium, but of course with some of them you've got to be careful of paywalls because that means they're not as open and they're limited to subscribers. And then you could even write for publications, so InfoQ would be a prominent example. There are numerous out there, and quite often you can send an email with your idea for your article, and then you can go from there, and quite often they offer shepherds and editors to help you on that journey too. Now the last one is speaking, so a quick show of hands. Who's ever given a talk at a conference or a meetup before? Raise your hand. So there's more people for that than content. That's interesting. So I find people tend to find speaking scary because, you know, there's a hungry pack of lions staring at you in the audience, and that's not actually true. Everyone in the audience wants that speaker to do well. They want to learn from this person. And actually, speaking was the biggest thing that helped me with my career because I started doing talks and meetups, talks at conferences and meetups to actually connect and make contacts outside of my role working in a bank, and I'd been there for 10 years. And that was one of the biggest things that changed because I was now a bit more visible outside of the bank. And the way I did it was I did it by starting small. Going back to that climbing frame analogy again, I started with a lightning talk, 5 minutes. We can all talk for 5 minutes about something we're passionate about. And in fact, I run a speaker group called Aspiring Speakers, and that's what we do. Lightning talks virtually online. Try to do it every month or two. And then you start kind of building up to longer ones. Maybe it's the 15 minutes that this slot is today. Maybe it's 20 minutes, which is standard for JavaScript conferences. Maybe you get to a full-blown 50-minute talk. Also think about the things such as, you know, the mechanism. Maybe you're not ready yet to stand up on a big stage in front of people. That's fine. It can start with online ones first. Even giving a demo over the phone counts. This idea of formulating what you want to say and then saying it. Quite often the way to find these engagements to speak, you apply to something called a call for papers or a call for proposals. They are all over the place. If you want to come and discuss more about specific ones, come and find me downstairs. But places like Sessionize, Papercall, even meetup.com are good places to find these types of events. And then when you apply, think about what you need to put in it. So have a punchy title, a short abstract, a more detailed outline, a target audience, any details of format. Is it a demo? Is it slides? And then if you've got any samples, add those in as well. And then hit the submit button and run away because you're going to be terrified and thinking, why am I submitting to this conference again? And I'm going to tell you it's worth it because when I started doing this, to be perfectly frank, I wouldn't be standing here with you today because I would not have this job if it weren't for speaking, if it weren't for the types of engagements that I've talked you through today. And with that, if you have any questions, come and find me downstairs. But it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.